right now. Welcome, everybody, to the Sovryn Community Call, episode 53. I'm your host, Englandia. I'm head of ecosystem growth at Sovryn. Iago, I think you have some background noise going on, but it doesn't matter. I'll be introducing you in a second. So for this week's agenda, we'll be talking everything from the roadmap to dev updates to budgeting with Armando, and lastly, Fameguild with Stan the Great. So let me kick this off with Iago speaking on strategy. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the background noise. So we have a very packed agenda today, so I'll keep it short. Can we go to the next slide? We're going to cover roadmap, we're going to cover development, we're going to cover budget and exchequer financing, and we're going to introduce Fameguild. So I will have relatively little to say. Next slide, please. One thing that I want to bring to your attention, we last week Friday had a conversation about the Sovryn platform and the Sovryn layer. This followed a really interesting thread in the forum. We've also got a new thread which I started in the forum called Sovryn Layer True Disruption, which also is interesting. I suggest you guys check it out. Among other things, there is a link to the white paper by John Light on rollups, as well as a draft light paper that I have been writing, which I'm hoping you guys will be able to comment on. This is a really important moment for Sovryn in terms of thinking about our next steps, how we're going to grow our ecosystem, and how we're going to grow the capabilities of what Bitcoin can do and what can be done for Bitcoin, and building a ecosystem of developers far more robust and perhaps innovative than what we're currently seeing. And I think this is a really interesting moment for Bitcoin, with what we're seeing with ordinals, with what we're seeing now with sort of like derivatives of ordinals. The amount of developer interest and activity in Bitcoin is probably at a all-time high since the block size wars. And I think as Sovryn we have a unique view. We're particularly well positioned. It seems like the world is coming to realize what we've been talking about, and I think therefore this is a particularly important conversation. I'd also like to talk about something else. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to highlight for you guys the really phenomenal change that we've been seeing in the protocol. This is a graph of SOV staking yield, basically from the beginning of the protocol, and you can see that even in the last bull market and through much of last year, it wasn't nothing. So protocol was delivering stakers with yield, with real yield, where this is beyond sort of SOV that was distributed. This is only BTC and stablecoin yield. What we've seen is a really dramatic change. Over the last 6 months, we haven't had 1 month where the average APR calculated either in BTC or in USD has been below 12%. This is extremely high yield, but I think it's probably the highest yield in the world, which is real yield, which is yield derived from protocol revenue. First of all, this is a really important demonstration of the fact that we're getting close to product market fit. I think it's a really important demonstration of the sustainability of what we're building and the ability to build a growth engine. And it's something that we should be shouting from the rooftops, because one of the interesting things is I think it's still, a hidden gem. The world hasn't caught on, but they will, because this kind of thing speaks for itself. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to you, Englandia, to take us along the rest of this pretty dense conversation we're having today.
Alrighty, yes, thank you very much. It's a very, very fascinating statistic. Let's move on to the next slide, please, Jeff. So product update with light. Welcome to the stage.
Thanks. Jeffrey can go to the next slide. So here's an update on the product roadmap. Under the first bullet point on the timeline here, these are the projects that we have already either completed or are very close to the process of completing. So we launched the new Sovryn web app and Mint and Sovryn Dollar in Q1 this year. We've also been experimenting with zero fee governance as a mechanism for controlling ZUSD and Sovryn Dollar inflation. And we approved SIP 56, which was regarding setting the Mint token and bonding curve, and are in the process of fully implementing that SIP so that Mint holders can convert their Mint back into SOV at the conversion rate specified in that SIP. Going forward, we have a bunch of projects on the roadmap, some that we planned on working on for a while, some that are new to the roadmap, including Bitocracy 3.0, which is the transfer of governance from Exchequer multisig to Bitocracy for the contracts that remain currently under the control of the Exchequer multisig. We have a new bridge integration that is coming with a multi-chain bridge and stability pool subsidies feature coming to 0. Sovryn SDK and developer portal so that developers can begin easily plugging into Sovryn protocol into new types of front-end applications. And we're also beginning the process of migrating functionality from Sovryn Alpha to the new Sovryn web app, including the swaps functionality, Bitocracy, voting and staking applications, borrowing and lending, spot and margin trading. And we're looking at hardening the Mint and Zero protocols and improving their security and resilience and scalability through features like the Mint deposit pauser, which we can use to pause any assets that are either experiencing high inflation or might have some kind of bug or issue that we don't want to have negatively affect Mint. A zero borrow pauser, which could be another mechanism for fighting inflation in a more proactive way. And then finally, further out, we're looking at improvements to Sovryn infrastructure, such as Lightning integration for on-off ramp, so people can use Lightning Bitcoin to get Bitcoin in and out of the Sovryn web app, as well as looking at Sovryn layer research and development and Oracle research and development, so we can harden those aspects of the system. As the asterisk says here, these items are subject to change in terms of the order in which we work on them, or even whether we choose to work on them at all, based on the current priorities and kind of signals that the market is sending to us. But so far, these are what we have identified as the highest leverage projects that we should be working on in 2023. So I'll be happy to take any questions at the end if we have time for questions. But that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Inga. Hey guys, Solbit here from the dev team. Unfortunately, Aurora isn't able to talk on the call today, so you'll be missing her dulcet tones and get me instead. Hopefully, I can make up for her. Next slide, please. Awesome. So we'll start off talking about the recent releases. So we've had a couple of things go out across the various dApps that we've got. First up, we've had an update to Alpha Sovryn app with an update to our bridges. The bridges now respect the token pause state on the Babelfish aggregator contracts. This means if, for example, as happened recently, where USDC and DAI were paused, this will not allow you to deposit those tokens from other chains, thereby preventing you from losing funds for gas fees or any other negative effects. We've also had some updates to Sovryn.app, the main one of which is the redemption email alerts. So a lot of people have been using Zero now, actively holding lines of credit or funds in the stability pool. Lots of people have been using the email notification alert system that we put in place to let you know when your line of credit is close to liquidation or other similar important events. And one of the things that we've heard from you guys is that it's really important to know when redemptions occur against your line of credit, because whilst it's something that doesn't occur frequently, it does require a bit of attention from people. For example, if you want to hold your funds in a certain currency, you may want to do something with the funds that you may want to manage your line of credit more closely if a redemption occurs. So users who are interested, you can now sign up for redemption email alerts under the liquidation alerts section of the notification settings. We've also made a number of quality of life updates. Given that we've got quite a packed agenda, I'm not going to go through all of them. If you have a look back to our release announcements, we've been putting out full change lists with those releases. If anybody has any questions about those, I'd be happy to answer them at the end of the call as well. Then in general things, we've made a fix to Tor compatibility for our dApps. Shout out to Alexander on Telegram for reporting this issue, and thanks to our DevOps team for getting that resolved. So I'm happy to report that now both Alpha Sovryn app and the new Sovryn web app work fully on Tor, so you can browse away in privacy to your heart's content. And then a big milestone for our backend team. We have now finally sunset our legacy backend system. So all of the legacy backend functionality has now been migrated over to either use the graph, or we've migrated stuff to microservices, which are much more scalable and easier to maintain. And where possible, we've actually made these services public. If you want to find them, you can look on our GitHub repository. Our GitHub organization, and you'll be able to find those repositories. We've spent a lot of time including really clear documentation on how to work with them, make modifications, and contribute. So if there's any backend developers out there, have a look, and we always welcome pull requests. Much appreciated. Next slide, please. So that was the recent releases. We do have more stuff in the pipeline though, and now on to stuff that is soon to release. So we've got a number of things coming up in the very near term. First one of those is something that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now, and that is subsidies for the Zero Stability Pool. So when you deposit funds into the Stability Pool on Zero now, you will receive a share of reward SOV that can be withdrawn at any point, and I believe those funds are actually liquid. So um, I can't remember exactly what the APY is going to be roughly, but it will look to give some quite nice bonuses to anybody who's got funds in the
We'll
stability
start with 5% APR, and that is basically creating a floor of 5% APR. And as we've discussed many times here previously, the maximum is unknowable, but could be as high as 100 and something percent. So the 5% guarantees APR even when there are no liquidations, and when there are liquidations, obviously it becomes extremely lucrative.
Awesome. Thanks, Iago, for the details. So in addition to that, we've also been working on other areas of the Zero protocol and the Zero UI. So we've made a number of quality of life improvements to the DApp based on feedback and other things that have come up during the course of development. First one of which is something that people had been requesting, especially with regards to the risks around, say, redemptions or liquidations. We've added a opt-in checkbox to the open line of credit flow. So that the first time you open a line of credit, you will have to manually select a checkbox, which includes links to relevant information about the risks of the Zero protocol. And you will have to consent to that before you're able to open a line of credit. So hopefully this means that people will actually understand the risks before they enter into a line of credit, which is great. Then we've also added a feature which allows you, when you're opening a line of credit or you are borrowing more funds on your existing line of credit. Currently, the origination fee is just displayed to the user as a static value. However, there is a possibility, due to the way the protocol works, if there are other transactions or redemptions or other changes in system state occurring in the same block when you make your transaction, there is a possibility that the origination fee can actually differ slightly from what you saw when you made the transaction. It's not much, but it can cause the transactions to fail, and it leads to a bad user experience because it's not obvious what's happening. For this reason, we have, similar to the trade interface on the Alpha Sovryn app, we have added a tolerance setting, so similar to the slippage slider on margin trading, say, that allows you to control the tolerance for your origination fee. So if you are looking to get a very specific origination fee rate and you don't want any divergence, you can set this to a very low value. If you do not mind your origination fee being quite different from what's shown, then you can adjust that as well to your heart's content. There's also been a number of other updates. Again, we're pressed on time, so I'm not going to go through all of them. We will be giving full change lists with each release that's going out. So look forward to seeing lots of tiny bug fixes and little improvements to things based on your feedback. Then another feature that's coming up based on user feedback is improved navigation between the legacy Sovryn app and the new one. So I won't give you too many spoilers now, but hopefully it should make it a lot easier for everybody to find their way between the different platforms while we're still running them side by side. Obviously, as Light mentioned, we're looking to transition most, if not all, of the functionality over to the new web app. At which point we'll consider, changing these navigation menus. But this should be a nice quality of life improvement in the meantime. Then another hotly requested update. We will soon be releasing a fix for the fee claiming withdrawal issue. So this is an issue which was affecting a small portion of our users who have staked SOV and were unable to claim some of the fees from the rewards page. So this fix will resolve the issue in its entirety, and everybody should be able to finally withdraw all of their fees. Woo! So that's it for soon to release. Next slide, please. Then looking forward, stuff that we are working on currently. We've got the implementation of SIP 56. This is the SIP to sunset the mint token and allow users to swap them effectively using the bonding curve for SOV. Then we've got, as Light already mentioned, we are going to be migrating functionality from the legacy app to the new one. First big piece of this is going to be an update on the new DApp to the convert page, and we will be migrating swaps functionality from the legacy DApp. Not only are we going to be offering the same swap functionality as the legacy DApp, we will also be adding a really nice new feature. Given that the Sovryn ecosystem is expanding, and we now have a number of different ways that you can swap tokens from one asset to another. For example, the Babelfish XUSD aggregator allows you to swap tokens. We also have the ability on the current version of the DApp to swap between or convert between dollar and ZUSD or DOC where balances are available, as well as a couple of other sources of assets that I haven't mentioned. And we intend to set up a system which we've called smart routing, which will, depending on the assets that the user desires to convert or swap, we will have the system dynamically look at all of the different paths or routes that the swap could take, and then pick the cheapest one for the user without the user knowing anything about it or having to do any kind of manual thought. So this means for users, you will get the cheapest possible price where possible. Then further updates, we've got some updates from the smart contract side to fast BTC. This is something that's been a long time coming. It's actually been audited a long time ago, but there were a number of other updates that had to happen to finally get this out. And what this update will give us is the ability to automatically rebalance between the different multi-sig wallets to reduce the liquidity administration effort. This will hopefully help alleviate some of the issues that we've got where maybe funds aren't available, and also introduces a reclaiming feature on the smart contract side, which will offer some easier resolution of issues when they, if they do occur. Then another kind of bigger project that we've started work on is the Sovryn Developer Portal and Sovryn SDK. This is something I'm actually quite happy I'm giving this update. This is something I'm particularly excited about as a developer. The intent is that we effectively have a single source of documentation for any of the parts of the Sovryn ecosystem that Sovryn Core have developed. This will allow us to have third parties or anybody who is interested in developing on the Sovryn ecosystem to really quickly pick up our tools that we've built, hook them into whatever they're building, and start using the Sovryn protocol or the parts of the Sovryn ecosystem in a very easy way. So that's really exciting. Then we have another update actually initiated by a community member. So shout out here to Capitalist42 for submitting a PR which will enable automatic IPFS deployment of the new Sovryn web app whenever we push out our regular releases. So what this means, for those unfamiliar with IPFS, this will give you unrestricted, uncensorable access to the Sovryn DApp, even if the centralized providers that we use for hosting our site are taken down for whatever reason. So really, really excellent contribution here. I'm super excited about this one. It's something I've been thinking about since I was first heard of the project. We just not found the time to prioritize it and get it working. So we'll update you more on that when it's closer to release, but that's another one I'm particularly excited about. Then another update that John that Light mentioned, we've got the multi-chain integration. So that's going to be a big improvement to our bridges and hopefully alleviates some more of the issues that people have with low balances on specific tokens on specific chains. Then finally, we've got a number of quality of life improvements, bug fixes, and the like in the works. I'm not going to go through all of them. Again, change lists will be provided when they're released. So exciting stuff to come. That was it from me. So over to the next person. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, Solvit. Okay, for Exchequer update, we allotted a big chunk of the call for this, so Armando, please take the floor. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Englandia. Actually, I don't think this update will take a big chunk of time. Just to update everyone, about a week ago, the Exchequer published a full financial and budget report on the forum that includes more detail than I'll be going into over this call. And the goal of this update is to primarily focus on the budget and the context around the budget that we'll be proposing as a SIP in the next couple of weeks. Next slide, please. So the full financial report that was shared last week includes the 2022 financial year results. It includes a review of the treasury balances. We'll be going over both of those briefly, mainly as a context to the new budget proposal. And we'll talk about what the objectives are that we're looking to accomplish through this budget proposal and what assumptions are we using or assumptions that we used when we put the budget together, and then we'll quickly go over what the budget proposal itself is. Next slide, please. Skip one more, please. So in terms of the financials for 2022, there are a number of things that we wanted to highlight from the financial reports themselves. So firstly, and as context to the budget, over the course of the last 18 months, actually maybe a little less, over the course of the last 12 months, the Exchequer has been constantly reviewing the protocol's expenses in response to different external, primarily market conditions. So what this means is that one of our main goals has been to provide the resources required to accomplish what's on Sovryn's roadmap, while lowering expenses as much as possible in order to ensure a long enough runway for us to accomplish the goals that we set out for ourselves. And so the first thing that I want to highlight is point number one here, and that's a comparison of our OPEX from Q4 of last year, so Q4 of 2022 versus the expenses of Q4 2021, and you can see a drastic reduction there of over 50% from 2.7 million to 1.2 million in Q4 of 2022. And that's a general trend that you'll see in the financial reports in more detail. And a few other points that I wanted to highlight. One is unrealized losses of 8.7 million that you'll see in the accounts. Now that's important because when Sovryn raised funds, those funds were primarily raised in Bitcoin up until the strategic round that was completed in May of last year. And the Exchequer did not and has not put in a policy of selling Bitcoin in order to manage its treasury for a number of reasons. One of them being that a lot of the liquidity that the Exchequer needs to provide to the bridges, to FastBTC, to the AMM pools is denominated in Bitcoin. Beyond that, a lot of the payouts that the Exchequer has historically has been in Bitcoin, as this is also a Bitcoin-focused project, obviously. But in the last strategic round of last May, funds were raised in stable coins. But one of the results of this is that when Bitcoin was raised last year, the average price in which Bitcoin was received by Exchequer was north of 50K. And obviously, the crypto market in general and Bitcoin specifically have suffered a bleed in value from approximately November of last year. This has resulted in unrealized losses of about 8.7 million, which is a direct result of the mark-to-market value of these assets going down. Beyond that, we just wanted to highlight, obviously last October there was an exploit. Exchequer made the decision to cover all losses of that exploit, which resulted in a cost of 12% of the full year OPEX. Next slide, please. Here is a breakdown of more information around the financial year of 2022 versus the financial year of 2021. And what you can see here is not only a large drop in asset values year over year, but also a drop in our OPEX and expenses over the course of that year. You can see that the only bucket of expenses, when we talk about adoption, development, operations, and overhead, that went up was operations, and the cost of the exploit is listed under the operations bucket. I also just want to reiterate that I'll be going through the next couple of slides relatively fast, but anyone who wants to see this in more detail can see it on the forum and is welcome to ask questions there, and the Exchequer is happy to answer. Next slide, please. And here again is just a breakdown of what the main difference is between the OPEX from Q4 22 versus Q4 2021. And this is part of the broader push by Exchequer to reduce OPEX and make sure that the protocol is viable and is able to meet its goals even if the current market conditions continue. As you all know, we've moved into bear market dynamics for at least the last 6 months, if not more. And a decision was made to ensure that we had the runway to weather the storm and come out the other end, having maintained the ability to meet the milestones in the roadmap. Now, this is the work has mainly been around introducing efficiencies in our infrastructure costs, introducing efficiencies into security costs. So an example of that is relying less on third-party audits. And by the way, a lot of the cost in 2021 was due to third-party audits, which are generally very expensive, and shifting that cost to what we found to be much more productive and reliable, which is spending funds and being able to have a large budget for bounties, which has proven to be actually much more beneficial for the project. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk about the treasury balances, because obviously this has direct impact on how we build the budget and what our runway is. Next slide, please. So here we can see the treasury balances at the end of 2022, as well as at the end of 2023. These are the balances and also the composition of the treasury. So approximately, at the end of 2022, approximately 33% was held in BTC, with 60% being held in USD stablecoins, with another 7% in a mix of different assets, primarily ETH and BNB. And the end of 2023 is a similar mix. However, there's been a reduction in USD holdings, an increase on top of that of BTC holdings, while all other assets have remained more or less the same. And the end result is that the treasury balance denominated in USD at the end of Q1 is higher than that of the end of Q4 primarily. And as you can see in the price row, this is primarily due to the increase and strengthening of the price of Bitcoin. One thing to note here is that all the SOV listed as a treasury balance in the slide is SOV that is the result of certain liquidity and watcher activities that the exchequer runs. So the exchequer runs a watcher, and this facilitates liquidations in the system. And as part of this, over time, the watcher may accumulate SOV, and that's the SOV that you see here. At the end of Q3, there was about 400K. A separate SOV report will be shared over the course of the next month, and this report will include a full updated emission schedule, as well as a historic look at how Exchequer has been expending funds that it has received through various SIPs from the adoption and development pools. Next slide, please. In terms of the treasury balance and asset composition, this is just to show that they to support the point that I mentioned earlier in the beginning, most of the funds raised were in BTC, and BTC was close to 70%, 60-70% of the treasury balance. What happened is, in the strategic round of last year, the raise was conducted in US dollar stablecoins. So it flipped the asset composition, which was in some ways fortunate because Bitcoin's price started dropping together with the market after that. But we were able to remain stable due to US dollar assets now composing of north of 60% of the treasury balance, and the exchequer has been drawing down primarily on that balance for OPEX rather than selling BTC in a weak market. Next slide, please. So given that background, we'll now discuss the budget objectives and assumptions. Next slide. So firstly, the primary objective is to secure runway through August 2024. And what's not mentioned here but is worth commenting on is that it's not only about securing runway, it is also about having the resources to pursue all of the goals that we're looking at accomplishing. And so we think that this new budget proposal will allow us to do so with minimal impact on the capabilities of the core team, and even improve those capabilities. There's a lot to be said for the efficiencies that have been introduced, as well as having a smaller team with better tools at its disposal, allowing it to achieve more faster. Now, there are important assumptions that we're making holding out this budget, the first of which is assuming that throughout the period, Bitcoin will be trading at a constant level of 16,500. Previous budget proposals from last year and have our assumptions was to work with a Bitcoin price bottom of 19,500. Due to all the turmoil in the market over the last few months, we decided to reevaluate this figure and move it down to what was potentially the bottom of this bear cycle, which was 16,500. And so we need to be able to secure the runway even if Bitcoin drops to this level and stays at that level throughout the period. Two additional assumptions are that no more capital is raised and that no revenue is driven to Exchequer. Exchequer up until now has made the decision to not put forward a SIP to divert any protocol revenues to go to the Exchequer, rather to SOV stakers. And the expectation is that this assumption or this mode of operation will not change throughout the course of this budget or through to August 2024 at least. These things might change, more capital may be raised, and Bitcoin obviously can continue to trade at higher levels closer to 30,000. All of this means that the runway is extended, but those are not the scenarios that we are planning for. Next slide, please. Skip this one, please. So, given those assumptions and objectives, the budget proposal is shifting from a monthly expenditure of about $450,000 to a level of $285,000. This gives us a runway of 24 months given current market rates for the crypto assets that the Treasury holds. This means that if Bitcoin were to stay at the level of approximately 28,000, we have at least 24 months of runway given this budget. It's a sharp reduction from the current budget. I will also say that the current budget was, when we look at how much we expended, and you can look at the financials, we generally were below this figure of 450,000. And kudos to the team for a number of different optimizations, primarily optimizations around how the team operates and our infrastructure and security costs. They have allowed us to lower the OPEX figure quite drastically while maintaining the core team capabilities. And obviously, I'm sure you are aware, there have been headcount reductions over the last few months. Most of these have been from the adoption team, some from the dev team and ops team. But in terms of the capabilities and our ability to move at pace, we believe that those have not been impacted. Next slide, please. So given the assumption that was made by the Exchequer, assuming a rate of 16,500 BTC to USD, that lowers our runway from 24 months to 19 months. The double asterisk there refers to liquidity provision. So that liquidity provision is specifically related to providing ongoing liquidity for Fast BTC. We expect that the liquidity requirements for Fast BTC will go down over time due to optimizations, and also incorporation of third parties who will be able to provide that liquidity instead of Exchequer. And so given that liquidity will likely not be required in 19 months or even a year from now, we can assume that the runway gives us 19 months all the way to August 2024. Next slide, please. Even though I think that covers everything I wanted to review. Okay, so this here we just go into some more detail around where that budget, where that 285,000 a month is expended on. So the majority, 77%, is on headcount. So those are direct grants to Sovryn core contributors, and another 65K for not headcount related expenses. We've seen a reduction of about 42% versus the current budget, as opposed to this proposed budget. In terms of the different circles, the bulk of these expenses are devoted to development, so over 50%. 20% are devoted to adoption and community, and another 24% to operations. Operations is all of the expenses that don't fall directly into adoption and development and are really behind the scenes, making sure that all systems are running. So I think that covers it for my update from the Exchequer. Thank you everyone for your time. If we have time for questions later, I'll be happy to answer. And again, if anyone would like to ask more specific questions or go into more detail, they are welcome to do so on the forum. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
The call, so let's bring in Stan to talk about Fameguild.
So I'd like to provide a little bit of an introduction to Stan. So Stan is an old hand in the crypto and Bitcoin space. He's led community management teams. He's participated in helping community management within Sovryn. And he left to pursue his own things some time ago. And I'm very excited. When he reached back out to us to try and let us know what he's been working on, which is something that he wants to bring to Sovryn. And what it is very well timed. He's been working on Fameguild, which is a marketplace and platform for the creation of NFTs within the Sovryn ecosystem, as well as Ordinals, which has absolutely exploded. And so with that, I'd like to ask Stan, please. The floor is yours.
Thanks, thanks for the introduction. Welcome, Sovereigns. Today I'm here to present what my team is building to expand the Sovryn ecosystem. So, Iago, can you share the screen, like presentation?
It's currently being shared. You just need to ask for the next slide.
Okay, cool. So, this ecosystem has been lacking a proper NFT marketplace for a long time, even despite tremendous interest from the community. And we are here to meet this demand of the market. But before taking our first step, we should ask serious questions that validate this demand, so we can contribute to this project confidently. Okay, so let's get started. These are some of the questions that we have answers for. Iago, can you move to the next slide? Oh, it's different. Yeah. NFTs. Are people actually buying NFTs these days? And we can see from the report of the Tap Radar that NFTs had a strong first quarter of 2023 with a 137% increase in trading volume to $4.7 billion, which is the highest since Q2 of 2022. So the answer is yes. People are still buying NFTs, still creating NFTs, and still building on top of NFTs. Which takes us to our next question. Can you move to the slide 3, Jeff? Yeah, thanks. Does Bitcoin community have interest in NFTs? Okay. If you have asked me this question 3 months ago, I would have replied no. Bitcoin community is a different breed of people. They don't like NFTs, no other tokens. But since Ordinals, things have changed. They have gained interest of Bitcoin community by making the chain more secure, with the miners and revenue from all the inscription fees totaling about $6.5 million in just 3 months. This changes things, and it's changing fast. So, what exactly did Ordinals brought to the table? Ordinals have attracted significant development attention, investor attention, and artist attention. But most importantly, it helped establish the belief that Bitcoin can have its own ecosystem of projects, just like any other chains. Can we move to the next slide, Jeff? Our competitors are in a race to capitalize this new market. New projects are coming forward very frequently, but none of them are in rootstock. None of them are in sovereign ecosystem. Uh, Jeff, next slide. That's our competitive advantage, to be the first and the best ordnance NFT marketplace in this ecosystem. So on our next slide, this our approach is to actually build a robust NFT marketplace secured by Bitcoin for ordinals. That's NFTs in RSK and add support for bridge NFTs from other chains, allowing them to be traded with the security of Bitcoin. In order to make this ecosystem more robust, we are building Web3 wallet for ordinals and NFTs. What we can see in this image is that this is the images of our first ordinals collection, which will be launched in a month. It's about 100 characters, each representing certain virtue or a sin, reflecting the constant struggle between good and evil in this world. So let's get into a little more detail about this particular ordinals. On our next slide, each characters have their own story, personality, and superpower. Let me introduce you just one character from this collection. This is Sarah. She's a hero. She uses her powers of acceptance to help those in need by being able to emit an aura of compassion and empathy. So, what exactly is the benefit of these ordinals that we are providing? These have unique benefits in our marketplace, which includes discounted fees, exclusive access, and token share. So, let's move to the next slide. And this is just one of our next collection. His name is Victor, and he's actually a villain. And we can see that there are several attributes for each character, including age, occupation, superpower, backstory, alignment, and alter ego. Each of them reflects the value of this ordinance. Thanks. And next slide, Jeff. So now it's time to discuss how exactly you can actually get involved and contribute to this task. So you can actually help us share the word, make sure to participate on our first ordinance collection sale, and join us on our social channels, including Twitter, Telegram, and Discord. That's it from me. Stay Sovryn. If you have any questions, please hit me up.
So I think maybe let's offer a few minutes of questions for Stan about how he wants to bring NFTs to the Sovryn ecosystem, and then we can open it up to broader questions.
Please.
I'll start with a question, Stan. In what ways will this be connected to the Sovryn ecosystem, and how does this connect for sovereigns?
So thanks, Java. Thanks for the question. So we have a deep partnership with Sovryn. Like we have a deep connection and with what we are building and in its mission. So in this project, we actually have decided to do a revenue share of our marketplace with Sovryn, and the percentage is roughly around 30%. So we are planning to do a revenue distribution of 30% to Sovryn and SOV stakers.
Oh, cool.
Okay, England, thanks for the question. So we are expecting to launch our beta marketplace by next month, and we'll be doing an alpha launch 2 months since then, and we also have plans to launch the Web3 wallet by the last quarter of this year.
Yes, sorry, no questions. Sorry, I just mess up the time, so no questions. I have to listen to the recording.
I have a question. I heard you mention, Stan. This is Light. I heard you mention rootstock NFTs as well as ordinals or inscriptions. Is this a marketplace for both?
Exactly.
Or is it like, are you creating like a bridge for bridging inscriptions into rootstock, or how does that work?
This is actually a marketplace for both of them. Like Bitcoin ecosystem in art sense and NFT sense is growing. Like now, just recently, we have just had another development in Bitcoin that's called Bitcoin stamps. So we will like to include Bitcoin stamps, Bitcoin ordinals, and NFTs in this roadstock ecosystem. And we are also looking forward to bridge all the NFTs from other chains into this roadstock chain. So it can be traded with the security of Bitcoin.
Yes, hi. This is Thomas. I wanted to ask if this is gonna be like an open marketplace that anybody can go and mint their own NFTs, and possible maybe even have like games create their own assets for their games. Would that be possible?
Thanks for the question, Thomas. Like, yes, initially it will be little permission, but as we move forward, and I think it will be complete by this year itself. Like, it will be completely permissionless. That's actually what we are aiming for. Yes. Okay, Landia. So, uh, ordinals wallet, the ability to transfer ordinals have been a little pain since recently. So that's the main reasoning behind why we have to develop an wallet for ordinals, and especially a Web3 wallet. So in order to do that, we had to include the support for ordinals natively, and we are also building on rootstock. So there will be support for rootstock and other chains progressively. And one of the important things that I forgot to mention before, and it's connected to the question of the Yago, like the main uh, purchasing token that we are going to use, like for transaction, will be DLLR or and RBTC. So I think that's an important point that I should mention.
Perhaps we can open it up to broader questions. I know I have one.
Unfortunately, I don't. It's probably a question for Aurora, or maybe somebody else is on the call who can answer it, but I don't have more information, sorry.
Armando, perhaps you can speak to that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
When can we expect to see fast BTC limits increased?
I think we can have the limits removed totally, being realistic, some point in maybe towards the end of May, June.
Sorry, I'm gonna need a follow-up question. How would we remove the limits completely? I mean, it's dependent on there being some availability of liquidity.
Yes. Well, basically what we'd be doing is looking at past activity on fast BTC and analyzing what the maximum liquidity requirements we've had. I think there'll be some experimentation with this. There's also a procedure that we want to put in place in order to backstop vast increases in incoming or BTC or BTC exiting the system. I think there will still be an issue if they're large deposits. Large deposits, I'd say, is probably over 10 BTC. So I think what we'll probably do is increase the limits gradually and review how the system is operating. But based on past activity, I think we're in a position to remove the limits altogether. I don't want to, there's certain caveats to that, but it is likely doable.
That the budget has been shared and explained here. It may seem boring, but it's important to communicate it. I actually think it's pretty entertaining. He says, any further details of information in line with what has been requested by the forum would be very much appreciated. Choo Choo says, looks really cool. I'm still not certain 100% how Fameguild relates to Sovryn. Well, one of the things that was mentioned, DLLR will be one of the listed assets in the platform, which I think is very interesting. And the fact that, Stan came from Sovryn just means that there's a very close alignment between both projects. So, it's good to build a relationship early on to see what's possible. Rivers says, is the Sovryn mobile app still happening? I did not see it on the roadmap. I'm not sure which one he's referring to, but Sovryn Financial is still in progress. Ben92 says we will see a return to one-to-one swaps between ZUSD and XUSD return for Zero Protocol.
I assume, and Ben can correct me if I get this wrong, that he's referring to the ability to deposit ZUSD into Babelfish. Babelfish are planning to remove ZUSD entirely from Babelfish. They have a BIP currently on their forums. You guys can go and participate if you want, about depositing all of their ZUSD into Mint and allowing sovereign dollar instead. So they would switch out ZUSD for sovereign dollars, and actually that's a vote is planned for the near future on that.
Sorry, I just went to voice just to elaborate. So you can borrow ZUSD from Zero Protocol today, and you can swap to dollar, but if you want to take ZUSD off the platform in the form of stablecoin, you generally have to either have to buy RBTC and then move RBTC or ETH off, or you have to convert to a stablecoin. And the only stablecoin withdrawal methods are linked to XUSD. So in order to get stablecoin off, and if I have misunderstood something, please correct me, I can borrow ZUSD, I can swap to XUSD, but when I did a test swap, I lost I only got 70 cents on the dollar, I believe, something around that on my test transaction. So at one point you could swap one-to-one between ZUSD and XUSD, and then you could monitor the liquidity levels to take stablecoins off the platform. Is there a better way of accessing the ZUSD Zero Protocol liquidity?
So I'm not sure how you would have ended up with 70 cents on the dollar, but by introducing sovereign dollars directly into Babelfish, that will allow you to swap directly through Babelfish. And in addition to that, Babelfish are planning to introduce an incentive curve, which will mean that there'll be a fee for depositing ZUSD or a reward for depositing ZUSD based on the balance. So they're going to seek to maintain a balance between the different stablecoins, and if things get out of balance, so for example, if there was too much sovereign dollar, you would need to pay a fee, but if there was too little sovereign dollar, you would get money back, basically a rebate for performing the transaction. Same thing for USDT or USDC. So what they're trying to do is encourage people to deposit USDC, Tether, and other stablecoins that we know that there's desire for to earn these rebate fees.
Do you have a sense for the timeline for when that being able to borrow in sovereign dollar will be available?
I can't speak to Babelfish's timeline. I know they're working on it and they feel like confident that they're towards the end of the process. So I believe it's quite soon, but
Okay.
I can't speak.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't know if Hyde can chime in real briefly on it, but yeah, it is a Babelfish question. So any other questions from the community? I know we're a little bit over time, so maybe I will just adjourn the recording, and then we can just continue on the after hours unrecorded Sovryn community talk. So let me just close out now and say thanks everyone for coming in and joining in on the discussion. These are exciting times for Sovryn, and I want to wish you all a Sovryn week, and tune in next time.